Bonjour, bienvenue à notre rendez-vous quotidien pour la presse, en ligne et en direct sur EBS. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le jeudi 18 mars. J'aimerais commencer avec une mise à jour à l'agenda de la présidente. Demain, en début d'après-midi, la présidente von der Leyen et le président du Conseil européen, Charles Michel, rencontreront par visioconférence le président de la Turquie, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, pour faire le point des relations entre l'Union européenne et la Turquie dans le contexte de la préparation du Conseil européen de la semaine prochaine. Puis, j'appelle maintenant Johannes qui a de bonnes nouvelles pour les entrepreneurs européens cherchant des financements pour leurs idées innovantes. Johannes.
Merci beaucoup, Eric. Today, the Commission is launching the European Innovation Council. President von der Leyen opened the online launch event this morning, and you find her remarks in our press corner and in the daily news. So, building on a successful pilot phase since 2018, the new European Innovation Council is designed to help startups and SMEs with scientific ideas to turn these ideas into innovation. 10 billion euros are available under the current MFF to fund small startups and SMEs with high risk but high potential, to support researchers that have the next breakthrough idea for breakthrough technology, and to offer coaching, matchmaking, and help in setting up a business. One key novelty is that the Commission, for the first time, will directly invest risk capital in companies. We have 3 billion euros available for that. And today we are also getting down to business directly and launch the first calls. We have 1.5 billion euros available in 2021, and a large portion of that will finance the Green Deal, or support the Green Deal, as well as innovation in digital and health technologies. As always, we have more information for you in the press release. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johannes. Finally, concerning today's council meetings, environment ministers are holding their first informal video conference under the Portuguese presidency. Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans and Commissioner Virginijus Sinkevicius participate on behalf of the Commission. Ministers will discuss the EU strategy on adaptation to climate change adopted by the College last month. They will also discuss the role that the Recovery and Resilience Facility can play in helping to integrate the green transition, as well as the Commission's legislative proposal on sustainable batteries, into the European semester process. Commissioner Sinkevicius will participate in the press conference at the end of the meeting around 6 p.m. And now we're ready to take your questions, and I give the floor to Sandor.
Thank you, Eric. I guess this is for Stefan. I would like to clarify something regarding the liability of the AstraZeneca contracts, because I read that each participating member state shall indemnify and hold harmless AstraZeneca with claims for death, physical, mental, or emotional injuries, illness, etc. So what does it mean in reality? That means that the vaccine producer has no liability for these cases at all. And the second question is, there are some new criticism coming from Hungary towards Brussels, towards the Commission regarding the contracts made. I know you don't comment on this criticism, but I would like to clarify and confirm that the delivery contracts with the actual producers were actually signed by the member states. So that part of the criticism is not correct, right?
Stefan.
Thank you very much, Sandor. I will start with your last question on the specific contracts or the purchase orders for the orders that are placed by the member states. It's correct that these purchase orders are placed by the member states with the company. The Commission is not a party to these purchase orders or to these specific contracts. This is because the member states are best placed to tell the company, to talk to the company about which number of doses is expected or necessary when and where. This is, of course, information that the member states have at their disposal, taking into account the state of the vaccination in the member states, the needs for vaccines, and so on. So these are contracts or purchase orders between member state and the company. With regard to the liability question that you raised, you have indeed, the principle is the same for all contracts. And what is this principle? I think we have already explained it several times in this press conference. It's the fact that the company remains liable on the basis of the European Union's product liability rules. The company is liable. However, in specific certain conditions, it is possible for the company to ask the member state to intervene, to ask for indemnification. These elements, the specificities of when this can be invoked is part of the contract, also in the AstraZeneca contract, but you will see that this part or most of this part is redacted. So it all depends on what is indeed in this indemnification clause. But the general principle remains that the company is liable. So if you put yourself in the position of the citizen, if a citizen encounters a problem with the vaccine, then either the company will be held liable and then the company may have to compensate on the basis of the liability rules. Of course, it all depends on the situation. Or if there is a reason for the company to claim indemnification by the member state, compensation would then come from the member state. We can, however, not give you more specific details on the specific cases where such indemnification would be requested, as this is confidential and redacted in most of the contracts. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to James, but we continue to focus on the issue of vaccines and vaccination.
Hello, Eric. Thank you for the question. Rather than triggering or talking about Article 122 of the treaty, wouldn't it make more sense for EU leaders to concentrate at their summit next week on using the AstraZeneca vaccines and other vaccines they already have? Thank you.
I think that one does not exclude the other. The fact is that we have a process of vaccination that relies on many different vaccines. And of course, member states are eager to continue using the AstraZeneca vaccine. They are, as you know, waiting for now, those that have suspended the use of the vaccine are waiting for the announcement to be made by the European Medicines Agency, I believe at 2 p.m. On its current analysis of recent incidents. And if those investigations lead to the conclusion that the AstraZeneca vaccine can continue to be used safely, which we all hope, then of course member states will certainly continue to use the doses for the vaccination campaign. But on the other hand, the President has been very clear that we need to consider the supply of vaccines for Europeans in general. You know that the deliveries that are coming from AstraZeneca are much reduced compared to what was initially foreseen. We have other vaccines that are coming on stream, and we are working on the scenarios that will assure us that we have sufficient doses of vaccines for a successful and quick rollout of vaccination campaigns across the European Union.
I believe EMA is planning a press conference, so I invite you to contact EMA on this as well in the course of the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. James, follow-up.
Yes, thank you for the follow-up. Does the Commission have a view on what exactly is the problem at national level with getting the vaccines out and into people's arms? I think, you know, less than half of the unused reservoir of AstraZeneca vaccines have actually been used. So I mean, what's the problem here in the Commission's view?
Stefan.
Listen, I don't think we're going to comment on the specific problems that member states are encountering. It is, of course, this is the first time that the Union is facing a pandemic of this dimension, I would say. So it's a very important challenge that we are all facing. It is important indeed that we make sure that the vaccination of the doses that are delivered as quickly as possible. Member states may follow different paths, different ways to distribute the vaccines, to decide when vaccine will be given. Some member states may wait a bit to inject the second dose. It all depends a little bit on the approach of the member states, but as far as we are concerned, we continue to insist on the fact that unused vaccines should, of course, be used as quickly as possible, because we need to have our European citizens vaccinated as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. David.
Thanks very much, Eric. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. So if I could just take another cut at this, trying to understand and think through what the president told us yesterday, I wonder what guarantee does the Commission have that if there were a ban on exports, again, knowing that the UK is a major vaccine producer, that those doses would in fact stay in the EU unless you're planning to actually seize them. I mean, we heard yesterday that you say Pfizer and Moderna are fulfilling their contracts, so the EU is getting the doses that it paid for. And then I wonder if you or Stefan could also address some other inherent sort of contradictions here. Yesterday we heard Commissioner Breton talking about the possibility of producing the Sputnik vaccine in Europe. I don't know that there's a basis for it or against it, but if there are factories that could potentially make that vaccine, couldn't they be making the Johnson & Johnson or the AstraZeneca vaccine? Why? I'm a little confused about why the president was talking down Sputnik a couple weeks ago. The Commissioner Breton is now talking up Sputnik in a way, saying Europe is willing to help on that front. And then the third piece, again, sticking with the vaccine topic, is related to the one use of the export ban and whether there's any further thought about responding to Australia's request that vaccine be released that was intended and purchased by them, that they now want apparently to donate to Papua New Guinea, given the pandemic situation there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On your first point, the President has been very clear that what we are talking about is ensuring two things: that there is reciprocity in our exports of vaccines to countries that also produce vaccines, and secondly, proportionality. That is to say that we look at the percentage of vaccinations that have taken place in specific countries when we are considering, and the proportion, the comparison with the European Union vaccination rate when we consider export decisions. She has not said anything else than that. We want reciprocity and we will consider proportionality. In terms of how we are going to implement this, we are in a process of thinking this through. And therefore, you mentioned the export authorization tool. That is one option. We will also certainly be discussing with companies. We're looking at the different tools that could be at our disposal, and we will see what means are necessary for the end. But it's the end which actually drives the process that we are following, not the means. So instead of putting forward a specific tool, you need to consider that what the European Commission is trying to achieve is a result for the European citizens. As the President said yesterday, of course, she is taking into account the needs outside of Europe, but as President of the European Commission, she also has a prime responsibility towards European citizens, and that is what is driving the thought process that is currently ongoing in the European Union. On Sputnik, I'm not sure really that it's a question for Stefan. If you remember, if you read carefully the comments that were made by Thierry Breton yesterday, he actually said at a later point in time when talking about possible manufacturing of the Sputnik vaccine in the European Union. So there's a time dimension here that you need to keep into mind. And I will give the floor to Miriam on your question related to exports. Don't go away too far, Stefan. I think you'll be back soon. Miriam.
Yes, so on your last question on the letter sent by the Australian Prime Minister to the President of the European Commission, we can confirm that we have received the letter and we will reply in due time.
Thank you. David, you have a follow-up.
Yes, in addition to my appreciation for the fact that the email systems seem to be working and the communications from Australia are arriving, it's good to know. Obviously, we're hoping for a little bit further clarity on the plans for those doses that were stopped from export. But just going to your point, Eric, on reciprocity, if we could there, can you hear me okay? On reciprocity, I just wonder then, if the goal is reciprocity and openness, does the Commission and does the Commission President really think that governments, I mean, we live in market economies, that governments actually control the behavior of these companies, whether it's in the UK or the US, that in fact there is any way for the government of the UK or the government of the US to insist on changes in contract terms or whatever is taking place in order to achieve the reciprocity that you seem to be seeking? I'm just confused as to how a government can necessarily achieve that.
I'm sure you're not confused, David. You know very well that even in a market economy, governments have a regulatory role to play. They also have a negotiation role that they can play. We, the European Commission, with the member states, negotiated contracts with companies. These contracts foresee, for example, that they cannot have other contracts that basically block them from delivering the doses that they're supposed to deliver to the European Union. So, of course, a public authority has the right and indeed the prerogative to consider the means at its disposal in order to ensure that public health objectives that are paramount when it comes to not only the health but also the social and economic life on the European continent can be secured. So obviously we are not fixed on a specific tool, but we are thinking about the different means of achieving this aim. And as you know very well, even in the previous phase of the crisis, we took measures in order to ensure that, for example, within the European Union market, there was a free flow of essential goods that were required to fight the pandemic. For example, masks, for example, respirators, etc., 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 so that we could achieve our aims. We live in a market economy, but it is not a free-for-all. It is a market economy that has to be at the service of citizens. Right, let's continue on health issues. But perhaps I see that Angela has a question on exports. So since you are on the podium, we will continue on the issue of exports before coming back to health issues. Angela, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Eric. My question is about what Ursula von der Leyen said yesterday toward the UK and the AstraZeneca affair. I was wondering, given that the majority of the exports from the EU to the UK is Pfizer-BioNTech, which is respecting the contract with the European Union, I was wondering how we could decide to block their exports towards the UK if they are respecting the contract. Isn't this a bit far away from what is written in the regulation on exports, which was approved at the end of January? If you can clarify on this. Thank you.
Thank you. What you need to remember is that we are thinking about a global effort when it comes to supply of vaccines to Europe. For that, we have advanced purchasing agreements, and the member states have signed purchasing orders, as Stéphane has just reminded us, with different companies. Now, we are trying to achieve an overall result when it comes to vaccination based on this portfolio. And in our relations with third countries, when it comes to exports, we need to keep in mind not only what individual companies are doing, but what the whole process is delivering in terms of results. This is what the President was saying yesterday. And if in a specific country there is vaccine production, and that actually, by the way, these vaccine production facilities are also in our contracts, but that we're not seeing deliveries of vaccines coming to Europe based on the contract that we have signed, this is something that we need to take into account when authorizing exports to that country. Reciprocity, that is the word in terms of vaccine exports, not individual producers. But once again, what the President presented here yesterday was a concept in terms of achieving an outcome. The tools that we will use in order to achieve that outcome are under deliberation and will certainly be discussed with leaders next week at the European Council. All right, let's continue on the issue of vaccines and vaccination. Tommaso.
Yes, good morning. Tommaso Gallavotti, Cross, thank you for the floor. Now we have, thanks to the President, a clearer picture of the deliveries of vaccine in the second quarter. I was wondering if you could tell us, because there is a fifth vaccine in the pipeline, which is CureVac, which should be a very reliable company because it was financed by the EU and it is moreover European, it is a German company. I was wondering if you could tell us if we could expect any positive surprise by CureVac, and because if I remember well, it was expected to be authorized around May, and if I would just like to know if it is possible that the CureVac vaccines might kick in already in the second quarter. Thank you.
Stéphane.
Thank you very much, Tommaso. I think we cannot really pronounce ourselves on this. You know that the CureVac vaccine is undergoing currently a rolling review with EMA. And so it's in the EMA process, I would say. It would also first still require a market authorization. So this work is ongoing. So for the time being, I don't think we can say anything further at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. We continue on the issue. Philippe.
Oui, bonjour. Bon, je comprends bien qu'on est dans une situation très délicate, mais néanmoins, la présidente a confirmé hier que AstraZeneca ne respecte pas les volumes qui lui ont été demandés. Alors, si on peut comprendre qu'au premier trimestre, il y avait des problèmes, au deuxième trimestre, on se pose quand même des questions. Et dans quelle mesure peut-on exercer une pression quelles sont les mesures pour forcer AstraZeneca à respecter les termes du contrat et éventuellement demander des compensations?
Stéphane.
Merci beaucoup. En effet, la présidente a bien expliqué que il y a des problèmes avec les livraisons au premier trimestre et au deuxième trimestre. C'est quelque chose que nous continuons à suivre et évidemment toutes les options restent ouvertes pour voir de quelle mesure on peut assurer que les livraisons telles qu'elles sont prévues dans le contrat ou suivant les engagements de la société peuvent être mises en œuvre ou implantées.
Ce que je peux rajouter, c'est que nous avons l'intention d'envoyer une lettre à AstraZeneca, une lettre qui va nous permettre d'engager un dialogue avec l'entreprise dans le cadre d'un processus de résolution de conflits. Cette lettre est en préparation et nous allons bien entendu consulter les États membres afin de pouvoir l'envoyer rapidement à l'entreprise. Donc nous allons évidemment prendre des mesures. Nick.
Thanks very much, Eric. Sorry, bit of playback there. So the UK has been told today by AstraZeneca that it's also going to get quite a significant cut to its deliveries next month from India, and their sort of response has been, we don't want to single out any particular company or country. They're doing their best, and sort of these things will happen. Isn't the EU with this talk of action sort of overreacting a bit? Isn't everyone having a problem with supplies at the moment? And Ursula von der Leyen spoke to Boris Johnson earlier in the year and sort of promised him that there wouldn't be any problem with deliveries. Is she going to speak to him again about this issue and try and sort this out? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, the fact is that we have always said that our objective was not to have conflicts with companies. Indeed, they are our partners in this endeavor. And that our objective is to make sure that we can increase the delivery of vaccines. Now, as you know, the European Union has been the continent that has been exporting massively vaccines and that continues to export vaccines to the rest of the world. So it is really not understandable that any comments would be made as to our attitude when it comes to delivering vaccines to the world, because that is precisely what we have been doing. And all that we're saying is that we expect that if we deliver vaccines to countries that are also producing vaccines, it should be on a reciprocal basis. That's all that we're saying. And I think that is perfectly legitimate. The public authorities, the executives in the member states and at European level have a responsibility towards European citizens to ensure the quickest and most effective rollout possible. And I'm sure we would be criticized if we were not constantly looking at what it is that we can do in order to ensure that the rollout takes place as it is meant to and as quickly as possible. That's what we're doing. In terms of contacts, there are constantly contacts between the European Union and its partners, including the United Kingdom, of course. Catherine.
Hi, Eric. So a very brief question. I just wanted to be clear about some of the figures that Commissioner Breton was giving yesterday about vaccine use. He said 70 million had been delivered, so many had been deployed, somewhere were in the fridge for a second dose, 2.2, I think he said, weren't used. So could we have clarity on those figures? It wasn't entirely clear yesterday. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Catherine, I think the figures that the Commissioner referred to were first the number of doses that were delivered, which is around 70 million doses, and then the number of deliveries of administration of the vaccines, which is around 51 million doses. Of course, these figures change every day, taking into account the vaccination rate in the countries and the deliveries that take place in the countries, but these were figures that were shared.
We actually come out now on social media even with the figures on the number of doses delivered to the European Union and the number of doses that have been administered. So you can check that on our websites and our social media accounts. What is obvious is that actually all of the vaccines which are currently being deployed require a second dose, and therefore it is only natural that you would have a stock of vaccines which are in reserve in order to provide people with the second injection that they require. And this is what makes, by the way, comparisons in terms of vaccination rates difficult, because you need to look not only at who has received one jab, but you need to look at who has received two jabs, right? Who therefore are fully vaccinated. And many member states have from the beginning. I remember, for example, the Prime Minister of Portugal saying this very clearly at the press conference when we went to Lisbon for the start of the Portuguese presidency, that they were calculating how many doses they needed to keep in stock in order to be able to deliver the second dose within the requisite period of time to people who had received a first dose. You have a follow-up, Catherine.
Yes, so I think Commissioner Breton was clear about that. But Stefan, what you haven't given, which the Commissioner did seem to give yesterday, was the figures for those that are in the fridge for the second dose and those that are not distributed at all. We say not deployed, even for first vaccine purposes. So Do you agree with the figures that Commissioner Breton gave yesterday, and are they correct? Is it 2.2 million?
Okay, I believe that the Commissioner Breton mentioned 55 million, but we'll get back to you with correct figures.
15. Yeah, Catherine, we will double check the figures and the transcript from yesterday and come back to you on those figures. Isabelle.
Bonjour. Je voulais revenir sur la lettre de mise en demeure dont tu viens de parler. Tu dis qu'elle est en préparation et qu'il faut consulter les États membres. Est-ce que tu peux nous donner une ligne de temps? Est-ce que c'est pour les prochaines heures, les prochains jours? Est-ce qu'il faut attendre le Conseil européen? Et deuxièmement, qu'est-ce que cette lettre déclenche? Tu dis on prend des mesures. Je voulais savoir un peu concrètement ce qui allait se passer, sachant en plus que, si j'ai bien compris, Thierry Breton et Pascal Soriot se parlent tous les matins entre 4h et 5h. Donc, qu'est-ce qu'il peut y avoir de plus que ça sur le plan dialogue informel? Merci.
Merci. En ce qui concerne le timing, je ne peux pas t'en dire beaucoup plus, mais évidemment, ce n'est pas un processus que nous souhaitons étirer dans le temps, donc nous allons essayer de finaliser tout cela rapidement. En ce qui concerne ce que cela implique, je passe la parole à Stéphane.
En effet, c'est une procédure qui est prévue par le contrat entre la société et la Commission et que vous trouverez expliquée dans l'article 18.5, si ça vous intéresse, et qui explique un petit peu comment les choses sont organisées. Chaque partie a la possibilité d'envoyer par écrit une lettre à l'autre partie pour inviter l'autre partie à participer dans une procédure de résolution de conflit. Qui aura lieu ensuite 20 jours plus tard entre les executive officers, comme on le dit en beau français, de la Commission et de la société. Le but étant d'arriver à une solution, à une résolution du conflit sur base de bonne foi et pour faire en sorte que le conflit qu'il y a là puisse être résolu de manière satisfaisante pour tout le monde. Merci.
Ok, merci. Je vois qu'il y a plusieurs personnes qui demandent à ce que l'on leur envoie les chiffres précis de nouveau. Donc, le chiffre que le commissaire Breton mentionnait hier en ce qui concerne les doses réservées pour la deuxième vaccination, je crois comprendre, c'est 15,2 milliards, so 15 and not 50. You know how sometimes it can be slightly tricky for us to pronounce this the right way. And I hope that this clarifies. But we will come back with the figures. Stéphane will provide them, perhaps even tweet them, just so that we are sure that everybody has them. We'll see. Isabelle, follow-up.
Oui, pardon, mais je ne comprends pas ce que ça change d'avoir une discussion entre les deux executive officers qui, si j'ai bien lu le contrat, sont le DG Sanko et puis le vice-président exécutif Europe pour AstraZeneca. Qu'est-ce qui se passe après? C'est-à-dire que justement, comme Thierry Breton et Pascal Soriot se parlent déjà tous les jours, je ne vois pas en quoi cette procédure change quelque chose. Donc, est-ce que si elle échoue, elle débouche sur autre chose? Dans le contrat, j'ai rien vu qui définissait l'étape suivante. Merci.
Isabelle, lorsque l'on formalise un dialogue, c'est qu'on lui donne de l'épaisseur et cette épaisseur compte. En ce qui concerne les étapes suivantes, nous les évoquerons s'il faut les évoquer à un moment précis. Pour l'instant, nous allons en rester à la formalisation possible. Nous n'avons pas encore envoyé la lettre et nous consultons les États membres, donc il faut déjà que nous passions cette première étape. Et ensuite, nous engagerons un dialogue qui, de fait, deviendrait un dialogue de nature plus formelle. Et cela compte dans une relation contractuelle. Marco.
Hi, Eric. Good morning. I have a follow-up to Angela's question on export, because there's something that is not clear. The EU has put in place a mechanism, a regulation to control the export and eventually to block the export for companies that are not respecting the engagement. My question is, would it be possible under this regulation to target a company who is respecting its engagement if the destination country does not respect the proportionality reciprocity principles mentioned yesterday by the president. I mean, is it possible to target a company who is respecting the contract under this regulation, or maybe that this regulation need an adaptation?
Thank you, Marco. The point is the following. We are not saying that we can achieve the results that we want to achieve with the tools that are on the table. We're saying that we are defining what it is that we want to achieve in terms of deliveries of vaccines to Europeans, and that we are reviewing the tools. It may be that we do not need to change anything, that simply discussing with the companies is enough, or it may mean that we need to adapt the tool that we have, like the export authorization mechanism that you have just mentioned, or it may mean that we need new tools. For the moment, that is entirely open. There is a reflection process which is ongoing within the European Union as to how to achieve the result. And of course, an important part of that will also be consulting the member states on what is the best strategy moving forward, what is the best mix of tools that we need to put on the table. So what you need to understand is that we do not have firm answers to give at this stage, precisely because we are analyzing the adequacy of what we already have in order to achieve the goals that the President outlined yesterday. Of course, if we need to change some of these tools or introduce new tools, as the President said, nothing is off the table, everything is possible. But nothing is certain either. So we are in this phase between having defined what it is we want to achieve and having built the tools that we need in order to do so. You have a follow-up, Marco.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Your answer is very clear. It means that you are open to new possible tools. But my question is very technical. Under this regulation, is it possible to target a company who is respecting its engagement with EU if the destination country has other problems with EU?
Marco, I'm sorry. I have given you the answer that we want to give you at this stage. We are reviewing things, and we will come back at a later stage. Francesco.
Yes, good morning. Sorry, I go back to the issue of the letter. I read the article that Stefan mentioned. The article clearly says that in the contract with AstraZeneca, clearly says that it refers to the courts, to basically this process ending up in the courts. So can you say that this is the first step towards a possible referral to the court of AstraZeneca? So are you basically saying that you are taking steps to take AstraZeneca to the court if it doesn't comply with the contract? Thanks.
Thank you very much. But Francesco, Article 18.5a refers to dispute resolution, and this is what I was talking about. What happens afterwards, whether or not there is a need to go to court or not, this is of course something we cannot pronounce ourselves about. What I just explained now is the mechanism for the dispute resolution on the basis of 18.5a, where the court is not mentioned. Thank you.
Our intention is to work with the tools that we have at our disposal and within the contract in order to ensure that we get the supplies of vaccines from the company as foreseen in the advanced purchasing agreement and the member states in their order forms. And what we're saying is that we have the intention of triggering one of the tools which is in the contract in order to achieve the same. You have a follow-up, Francesco?
No, just to say that on the 18.5b, there is a reference to the court. So you mentioned that the article 18.5, it's obviously the same procedure. So there is a clear next step, which is going to the court of Belgium. So But I mean, if you can clarify that, whether this, if after 20 days the company doesn't clarify the issue and is still not complying with the contract, is the next step going to the court? Thanks.
Well, you can read the contract as well as we can, Francesco. What we are saying is that today we are taking a specific step. We will see where that leads us. Raf.
Yes, hi. I'm sorry because I actually had exactly the same question as Francesco, and about whether we consider this the first step in legal action, and you have already addressed this, but I think we can.
Thank you. Okay, I open the floor to other issues. David, I know you have a question on COVID restrictions. Go ahead.
Oui, merci Eric. Et en particulier, je voulais savoir quelles sont les règles que vous allez appliquer au personnel de la Commission pour la période de Pâques, vu qu'il y a encore l'interdiction des voyages de la part des autorités belges. Est-ce que le personnel de la Commission pourra rentrer dans son pays et voilà, merci.
David, les choses sont extrêmement simples. Les personnels de la Commission qui résident en Belgique sont soumis aux lois et réglementations belges en application. Nous ne faisons pas nos propres lois et règlements. La législation belge, les mesures belges actuelles interdisent les voyages non essentiels, si je me souviens bien. Donc attention à ne pas généraliser encore plus des mesures qui sont déjà, comme nous l'avons dit ici, très sévères. Mais les personnels de la Commission se plient et sont soumis aux lois nationales. David, follow-up.
Oui, merci. Follow-up parce que ma question, en fait, je la posais parce que j'ai reçu une lettre de la part d'une maman d'un enfant, je crois, dans une école européenne. Et les écoles européennes ont décidé d'avoir une semaine après Pâques de cours à distance en vue du fait que il y a une prévision, le personnel de la Commission, une partie du personnel de la Commission va rentrer dans les États membres s'ils remplissent les conditions des voyages essentiels. Mais bon, il y a un fait que les écoles européennes vont pas avoir de cours en présentiel et cela laisse entendre, et dans la communication de l'école européenne c'est assez clair, dans la lettre, que beaucoup de monde va rentrer dans son pays. Donc, je me demande s'il y a deux catégories à l'intérieur des institutions européennes ou de la Commission européenne et même plus à l'intérieur de la Belgique. Voilà.
La Commission n'a donné aucune indication particulière au personnel. Et si tu as des questions sur les mesures que veulent prendre les écoles européennes, il faut que tu t'adresses aux écoles européennes. La Commission européenne, encore une fois, attend de son personnel qu'il respecte les lois et les réglementations en vigueur en Belgique. Voilà. Mais encore une fois, tu as les voyages essentiels et les voyages non essentiels. À chacun de s'adapter par rapport à cela. Avons-nous d'autres questions sur les questions santé, vaccination, restrictions, liberté de mouvement à l'intérieur de l'Union européenne? Je n'en vois pas. Et alors je reviens à Georgi qui avait une question, je crois, sur la Turquie. Donc nous ouvrons le chapitre Affaires extérieures.
Oui, c'est exact, Eric. D'une certaine façon, j'ai été inspiré par l'annonce de cette conversation téléphonique avec le président Erdogan. Et je vois que les États-Unis ont déjà réagi. Les autorités turques ont l'intention de bannir le parti kurde HDP. C'est une force politique qui est tout à fait légitime dans la vie politique turque. Et j'ai remarqué qu'il
il manquait une réaction européenne. Alors, est-ce que vous la réservez pour cette conversation avec M. Erdogan ou vous pensez que ce n'est pas le temps de réagir? Ce serait une première question. Une deuxième question, en général, porterait sur les relations avec la Turquie. Nous savons que Erdogan a demandé un sommet avec l'Union européenne. J'ai l'impression qu'il n'y a aucun appétit pour un tel sommet de votre côté, mais ça c'est mon opinion. Moi, ce qui m'intéresse, c'est ce que vous avez à dire là-dessus. Merci.
Nabila.
Oui, bonjour Georgi, merci pour ta question. Écoute, nous allons publier, ou nous sommes sur le point, donc tu auras bientôt une alerte, sur le point de publier justement une déclaration qui sera une joint declaration sur le sujet que tu viens d'aborder. Et donc voilà, je vais pas le dire maintenant sur le podium, mais en effet, nous allons réagir d'ici sous peu et tu auras la réaction tout de suite. Quant au sommet, quant au sommet, écoute, je peux simplement dire que nous avons, pour l'instant, à this stage, nous allons, comme tu sais, il va y avoir une discussion au FAC et il va y avoir également une discussion sur la Turquie lors du Conseil européen. Les développements seront discutés, il y aura un rapport qui va être également soumis et donc à ce stade, je pense que je ne peux pas aller plus loin, à moins que Eric veuille dire quelque chose.
Non, je crois que notre ligne d'horizon, c'est le Conseil européen de la semaine prochaine en ce qui concerne le dossier des relations entre l'Union européenne et la Turquie. Alors, nous restons sur les questions affaires étrangères. Oliver.
Hello. Hi. Yeah, a question on Kosovo, Israel, and the issue of the Kosovar embassy in Israel that's supposed to be in Jerusalem. Is the Commission or the External Action Service aware of an offer by the Israeli government to the Kosovo government of the delivery of COVID vaccines, apparently a batch in the 6-digit figures? And is the External Action Service aware of the possibility that this might be, a quid pro quo, a young team between opening the embassy in Israel, in Jerusalem, and receiving these vaccines? And if so, what do you intend to do about this? Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your question, Oliver. What I can give you is our position on the opening on the opening of the Kosovo embassy in Jerusalem, which is that the EU regrets Kosovo's decision to diverge from EU position on the issue of Jerusalem. Kosovo has identified EU integration as its strategic priority and is expected to act in line with its commitment. The EU position is very well known, in line with UN Security Council Resolution 478 of 1980, which called on all UN members to withdraw their diplomatic missions to Israel and from Jerusalem. All EU member states' embassies, as well as the EU delegation to Israel, are located in Tel Aviv. The EU has repeatedly reiterated its firm commitment to negotiate an viable two-state solution built upon the internationally agreed parameters and international law. In its conclusion in December 2017, the European Council, as head of the state and government level, reiterated that the EU position on Jerusalem remains unchanged. The EU's long-standing position is clear. A way must be found through negotiations to resolve the status of Jerusalem as the future capital of both states, and the aspirations of both parties must be fulfilled. The question of Jerusalem is a final status issue. In this context, any diplomatic steps that could call into question the EU's common position on Jerusalem are a matter of serious concern and regret. As for your second question, I am not sure I know anything about it, but maybe Anna, you know something?
You have info? Yeah. No, we don't have any specific comment to make on this this alleged offer that you mentioned between Israel or from Israel to Kosovo. Are there other questions for us on foreign relations? Lukasz, I see you have your hand raised.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Lukasz.
At the end of the last year, the European Commission was committed by the European Council to prepare a plan for a democratic Belarus. I didn't see recently any information regarding that plan, so could you give us a state of play on the preparation?
Thank you.
And
C'est pour Anna, je
Anna,
pense.
yeah. You muted yourself, Lukasz, I think. You want to compliment?
I have another question. I would like to add that I have another question on state aid, but maybe I will ask it on the
That will be for
after
later.
the foreign chapter.
That will be for later. Thank you. Anna, on Belarus.
Hello, many thanks for the question. I don't actually have too much details to give you. Of course, I think, both the European Union, our leaders at the highest level, and of course also the European Commission have said that we are ready, of course, to support a democratic Belarus strongly with a variety of means and instruments that the European has at its disposal. This was tasked, as you know, by the European leaders. Our support measures are currently being fine-tuned, and I can only say that they will be presented in due time, depending on the political situation and the developments on the ground.
Thank you. I see no further questions for us on foreign relations, unless, Tommaso, your question is also on foreign relations. If it is, go ahead.
Yes, it is.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a question on the accusations made yesterday by US President Biden against the Russian President Putin. First, does the High Representative Borrell agree with President Biden? And does this accusation change anything in your relationship with Russia? Thank you.
Thank you. Nabila.
Thank you for your question. Look, I mean, there is, sadly, a long list of failed and successful assassination attempts carried out against critical and independent figures in Russia, including politicians and journalists. Many of these cases have not been investigated, remain unresolved, and the perpetrators have not been brought to justice. In the case of the assassination attempt of Alexei Navalny and the assassination of Sergei and Julia Skripal, the EU has imposed sanctions on those involved coming from Russian military intelligence or of the specific Russian Chemical Research Agency. The Russian authorities have also carried out illegal actions in Ukraine and have clear roles in other conflicts and in the EU's neighbors and beyond. As president of the Russian Federation, you know that Vladimir Putin ultimately has responsibility for the Russian authorities' policy and actions.
Thank you very much, Nabila. Tommaso, you have a follow-up.
Yes, so the reply to my question is yes, Borrell agrees with Biden. Thank you.
No, the reply to your question, Tommaso, is the one that Nabila has given you. As you know, we do not comment on comments, and that is our line. Thank you. Are there other questions on foreign relations for us today? I do not see any, so I come back to Lukasz, who had a question on competition. Lukasz, you have the floor. If you're still there. Yes.
This week, I think it was on Tuesday, European Court of Justice ruled that the Polish tax on the retail sector and the Hungarian tax on advertisements do not infringe European law when it comes to state aid. So in effect, the ECJ dismisses the Commission's appeal and upholds the judgments of the General Court. So I was wondering whether do you have any comment of these judgments, and I would like to ask, do these two judgments change the Commission thinking what is actually the state aid and what is not the state aid when it comes to the European Union tax policy? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ariana.
Good morning. I hope you can hear me and see me. So indeed, on Tuesday, there has been this judgment by the Court of Justice. We have taken note of this judgment, which indeed upheld the judgments by the General Court in the Polish retail tax and in the Hungarian advertising tax state aid cases. The General Court has annulled the Commission's 2016 and 2017 decisions concerning an Hungarian tax on advertising and a Polish tax a Polish retail tax, respectively. In both cases, the Commission had concluded that the progressive tax rates on turnover granted a selective advantage to companies with low turnover over their competitors. We will carefully study the judgment and reflect on its implications. So at this stage, there is nothing I can add to this.
Thank you very much. Are there other competition questions for Ariana? No. Are there other questions for us today? Marina.
Hi, Eric. I have a problem with the camera. Is this a problem? Can I ask the question or?
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
We do radio and TV.
This is, thank you. So my question goes to this weekend. We should have this annual, semi-annual change of time. So I would like to see if there is any information where we stand in European Union regarding the decision to end this seasonal change of time. I know that there is a decision between member states that should be adopted, but do we know anything at this point? What can we expect at this moment? Thank you.
Thank you. What I can tell you is that we're all looking forward to a change of season, that's for sure. As to the change of time, Stefan's other hat will now come into play. Stefan.
Thank you very much for asking a question which is not related to vaccines. A few things, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I said 6 months ago when we had a similar seasonal clock change. The new thing is that the next clock change is expected to take place on the 28th of March. We have, as you know, a Commission proposed to end the seasonal clock changes in September 2018. This was a proposal that we introduced following a request from citizens, following a resolution by the European Parliament, following a number of studies, as well as a public consultation. Following an assessment of the existing arrangements on seasonal clock changes, the Commission then came to the conclusion that while avoiding fragmentation, Member States are best placed to decide whether they want to keep permanent summer or winter time. In March 2019, the European Parliament backed the Commission's proposal from September 2018 to end seasonal clock changes. But the ball is now in the camp of the Member States, as it's up to them to find a common position in Council. Thank you.
So in other words, the clock has not moved forward on changing the time. Thank you. Any other questions for us today? No, so thank you very much and see you tomorrow for this week's last midday briefing.